This is one of the biggest issues that I see across my community and across all the people that I work with. It's just really understanding what to actually create to put onto the ads manager and run that as an ad, because it can get a little bit confusing. I often see people running the same ad for too long and not knowing what to create next and what to test. So in this video, I'm going to dive into how to actually go about doing this and how to build this creative diversity for meta ads. So without further ado, let's jump straight in, because I've put together a little presentation and I'm in my new study, my new office, which I've just decorated, as you can probably see. And I'm keen to start providing a bit more education-based content to help you with your e-commerce brand. So let's kick this off. So the idea is we want to start thinking about, when we create this content for our meta ads, we want to have as much diversity as possible. It's no good just posting the same video, the same image. You know, I work with people who have paid a UGC creator, a lot of money, and they're then stuck with that one piece of content that they're trying to push. They've already tried to run it as an ad, it's not bringing in results, and they don't know what to do next. So this is what we're going to kind of go over. So if you're watching this video and you're having issues with knowing what to do, it's likely that you're stuck with maybe one creative or two creatives, and you're just trying to, do the same thing over and over again, and you're expecting different results because you're trying to tweak the targeting and things like that. But it's likely the creative that is the problem, or lack of creatives that's the problem. So if this sounds like you, this video will fix it. You most likely at the moment you have one format and you're just trying to test that same format over and over again. This is likely just one product photo, or like I said, just one video and nothing else in rotation. Essentially, you're just trying to push the same thing on repeat. You've likely got no testing system, so there's no structured way to trial new angles within your business. So every product has multiple angles to test, but it's likely right now you're just stuck on that one angle, and that's the one that you can see, and you're trying to push it because you believe that that one's to be correct. But remember, the audience decides on what angle they purchase, and that's something that we need to do. That's something we need to find with the testing that we're going to do. You don't know what to make. This is likely a big issue. I see this inside my community all the time. So, it's no idea what to film. Maybe you're not very good at getting your own content. Maybe you don't know how to brief a creator. I see a lot of people who just send their product to people on Instagram or UGC creators, and they kind of leave it up to them to decide how that video should look. And in my experience, that's often the worst way to go about doing this, because you're just going to get back the most random piece of content, and it's likely not going to work. You might get lucky and you might get a good one, but in most cases it usually doesn't work. So the other one is creative fatigue. So if you're running the same ad for a long period of time, your frequency on that ad, which basically means the amount of times the average person sees the ad, will start to increase. And what happens is your cost per acquisition will rise, because if people are just getting sick and tired of seeing the same ad over and over again, it's just not, it's not going to sell. It's not going to work. It's basically going to hit the end of its lifespan, and we're just going to have to iterate from it or just kill it, because ads don't last forever. Some last for a long time, but I've noticed recently with the new meta updates, it's definitely got a shorter time span that you can run these ads for. The next one is scared to test. So you might have found one winner. Now I see this all the time. You found one winner and your whole ad account is relying on that one creative. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's an image, and that's bringing in loads of sales, but you're not risking some of the budget to test new angles, new formats, new creatives. And that's the worst mistake you can do. You should always allocate some of the budget to go towards new ads that you haven't tested yet. And you can't repeat wins. So when something works, like maybe that creative that you've been running and it seems to be working, but you can't explain what it is about that ad that actually seems to be performing. So, that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. The framework that I like to use is this. So it's 3 variables and we test them separately. And most brands only ever change one. So the first thing we need to think about is the format. So what I mean by format is this is the type of asset that it actually is. So it's either, for example, a video, a static image, a carousel, or it could be the production style. So maybe it's filmed on a professional camera, or maybe it's filmed on an iPhone. So there's loads of different types of format. Some are more relatable to the audience than others. Some videos work, some images work. It all depends on the brand, the product, the niche. There's loads of different factors, which is why we have to test, because what I say works for my brand might not necessarily work for yours. So for my brand at the moment, videos work the best because we're building a cinematic asset brand, which is a digital product business, and it heavily relies on showing before and afters through videos. It's more difficult to do that with images. That's not to say an image won't work, but we just haven't found one that outperforms a video yet. So again, it's all testing. Second, next one, we have the angle. So this is the actual concept and the message, the emotional reason to buy. So what I mean by angle is, the average product has multiple angles that you can test around it. You could test the problem solving angle, you could test the emotion angle, you could test the desired outcome angle. There's loads of different types of angles that we can test, and we can do this through all the different formats. So already you can see the vast amount of different combinations that we can have now, because we can have different formats, we can have different angles. And next we're going to talk about the hook. So this is the opening, and this is the first 3 seconds that essentially stops the scroll. So as someone's on social media, if that hook in that first 3 seconds is good enough, you're going to capture attention, and then you can follow up with a really good video. So what we can do is we can take all the formats, all the angles, and then we can test different hooks on those videos, for example, or those images. You can have different text on screen hooks. So you can see that there's a huge amount of combinations that we can test here. So there's no reason why you should be testing just one video and one image. You can take that video and you can probably make like 10 to 20 different versions out of that same video. So there's crazy amount of scale just in that alone without even needing to get more content. So keep 2 fixed and you change one. This is how you learn what actually works, because there's no point in just trying to change absolutely everything at once. You need to find what seems to be performing well and then just change one thing at a time so you can measure the results. The multiplication effect. So like I just discussed, the amount of combinations that you actually have there. So let's say, for example, you had 6 different formats and you had 8 angles within those 6 formats, and then within that you had 10 different hooks for each creative. So that's a crazy number. That's 480 unique ads you could create just off that alone. And you can test this from a handful of building blocks. So you don't need more products, you just need more combinations of what you actually have. So you can see there, there's no reason why you can't be going out there and creating a decent amount of ads from the content that you perhaps already have, or now understanding what sort of content to get next. And that's what we're going to talk more about in the next slide. So these are some of the video formats that you can test within your creatives. So I'm just going to list through some of my favorite examples. These are the workhorses and what each one does best. So let's start off with the UGC testimonial. So if you don't know what UGC stands for, this is user generated content. And this basically means we find people on social media who do this as a job, and we pay them money, or ideally give them a free product in return for some content. In most cases, the more high quality the creator, they're going to want pay, and they're going to want some sort of reward, because they're not just going to do it for free, right? They do this as a job. You can use customers for this if they've got good enough content. And another way of doing this is what I like to call building a affiliate army. So these are customers that we turn into reps for the brand, and we can ask these people for content. So the idea of a UGC testimonial video is it just builds insane trust, because it's a real customer talking to the camera, talking about how fantastic your product is and how much they love the brand. And people buy from people at the end of the day. So those work really well. Next one, we have a talking head. So this is perhaps you as the founder, or you get someone that you can work with to talk to the camera essentially. So it's explaining what the product or brand is about and what the product does. It's high authority, and it's great for cold audiences. And what I mean by cold is this is relatively new traffic that hasn't seen your brand before. So these talking head videos build a lot of trust. Next, we have unboxing. So these are, it's obvious what these are. So someone gets it through the door and they just film themselves unboxing it. Again, you can do this from home. You can do this with your own brand, or you can ask reps, UGC creators to do this for you, or just ask friends and family, people you know. Like, there's no harm in reaching out to friends and giving them a product and asking them to film some content. If you're on a relatively low budget, then you need to think outside the box in ways that you can do this without spending a crazy amounts of money. The reason unboxings perform well is because it reveals the premium product, and if you've got fantastic packaging, this works really well. So if you look at brands like Lush, for example, they've got very photogenic, social media vibey content because the packaging just looks awesome. So it's easy to get that reaction. It's easy to get that content because it just looks incredible. This triggers desire. So this makes people feel like they also want to buy the product. Next, we have product demos. So again, says what it is. It's essentially showing the product working. So this is better for products that need explaining. If you haven't got an obvious product, then maybe you need to focus on these product demos a bit more. Let's say if it's a problem, a product that solves a problem, then you might want to tap into that sort of content style because it just helps the audience understand what your brand actually sells and how the product even works and what problem it solves. So just showing it working essentially. Voiceover and B-roll. So these are really good. These are basically just a script over clean footage, polished and scalable and really easy to make, to be honest, because there's a few ways that you can go about doing this. You can either use your own voice, you can use your partner's voice, you can use your friends and family, or you can actually use AI now because it's getting really, really good, really realistic. So you can, if you don't know what B-roll is, by the way, it's essentially just like clips of your product. Maybe it's on a nice backdrop or, some sort of studio vibe, and you get it in slow motion, just B-roll of the product being used. If it's a product that you can display a person using, then that's also B-roll. You can get lots of shots showing the product in use again, but the only difference is you're adding that voiceover. Next, we have before and after. So this is another transformation sort of post. So we're showing the before and after transformation of someone using that product. It's great for niches like beauty, fitness, home, and pets. If it provides an obvious outcome and you can display that visually for a video, then great, use that format. Next, we have listicles. So these are really easy to make and they're super easy to scan for people that are just browsing social media. So what these are basically just a video, and you're just listing 3 reasons of, as an example, 3 reasons why this sold out. And that is it. Super easy. And next we have problem to solution. So similar to the product demo and the before and after, we're essentially naming the pain in this one. We're putting a twist on it, and then we present your product or your brand as the fix to that problem. Again, work really well for transformation sort of products and products that solve an obvious problem. So let's jump on to some more angles that I like to use, and these are the ones that brands don't try as much, which I'm surprised to see, but perform really well. So firstly, you got the street interview. So you've all seen Simon Squibb going around the public and asking people what their dream is. The reason these work really well and they go quite viral and people engage with them is because people love to see the reactions. So it's stopping strangers in the streets, it's looking for honest reactions, and it's very native to the feed because it's authentic. So the reason street interviews work well is because it just displays, a huge amount of trust and credibility. Day in the life. So these are, let's say you've got a product that you can slip into some sort of routine. Maybe it's like, I don't know, like a supplement brand or yoga business. If you can slip that product in and you can soft sell it And these are good because they have quite high watch time. So again, you can either do this yourself, you can use creators, any way that you can go about doing a sort of day in the life. Obviously, it doesn't work with every single brand, but if you've got a niche where you can show that, then use it. Comparison. So again, this is a side by side showing where you win and where it counts. So for example, you could have let's say you have a more premium product than a product that's already out there. Maybe you can get it on Amazon, for example. Well, you want to list the features and benefits of the one that's on Amazon or the slightly lower quality one, and then show your one as, why it's better. We're basically just showing why it's better. ASMR, satisfying. So these are really good. These are super easy to make. So this is basically just sound and texture led. So you might hear these on social media all the time. Again, it depends on the brand, but they work well with niches like the food, beauty, packaging, and you're basically, again, you can do this yourself or get a UGC creator to do this for you. So they're just easy to make, right? They don't take much time at all. It's all basically just to do with the sounds that you're hearing on the screen, and just simplistic sort of videos. Reaction/duet. So basically this is reacting to a review or a brand. Again, very native to the feed because people love to see reactions. So for example, let's say you get a negative review, you could react to that review on TikTok or Instagram, and you could actually run that as an ad. In some cases, you could have, I've seen recently a lot of brands using like a negative review, but when you actually start reading it, it actually turns out to be a positive review. So it's got a bit of a fun spin on it, and you could react to that sort of thing. Or a trend, again, depends on the brand, it depends on where you're positioning your brand. If it's like a pet business, this is where one of my businesses is, and you can be quite out there with the pet brand because it's quite it's quite a fun sort of audience to build because everyone's got dogs. It's all about cuteness. It's all about laughing. And again, it depends on what business you're trying to build there and what niche you're in. Text only narrative. So this is basically the same as the voiceover one, but this would just be captions over B-roll. So you don't need to worry about sound as much. It just works on mute. You can add some music, obviously, but the idea is this is just one for people who are not using the audio, which is a lot of people. So again, super easy to make, fast, and you can create a lot of content in that sort of format. Next one is AI generated video. So this is a relatively new one, but it's worth considering. Just don't overuse it. So if you're going to use AI video, just make sure you're using a platform that supports some of the best video generators. So the ones I use are Kling 3.0. I use Google Nano Banana to generate the image first because I think it's important to build the video from an image. So you can animate that video essentially. You get better results that way, I find. You can use other AIs. You can use other AIs, but the ones I've been having success with is the Kling 3.0. So this enables you to test angles cheaply because you're not needing to fork out hundreds of pounds for a UGC creator. You can do this relatively quick, relatively simple. You need some editing experience if you're going to make a really good video. The thing I'd like to point out though is just make sure you're not overdoing this. Make sure it's decent. You don't want it to be crappy. You don't want it to look proper AI because I think that will do the opposite of build trust and people are not going to buy your product because of it. So I'm currently running some AI generated videos for my new digital product business, and I mean it's performing quite well so far, but it is highly edited. I've not just taken that AI video and just slapped it onto Meta ads. I've put that into my video editing software and I've done loads of edits, loads of tweaks, and made it look super polished. So that's something to take into account. And next we have the founder story. So this is a brilliant format or angle to test because people buy from people, and ultimately if you can get behind your brand, if you can show that you actually exist, then people are more likely to be on board with the mission that you're building. So we want to talk about why the brand exists, and this just builds a crazy amount of emotional connection to your business. So don't sleep on founder stories. I know you probably feel like, oh, I don't want to get in front of the camera, I don't really want to talk about my business. But trust me, it's an unfair advantage for the founders that do this because they get much better results on their meta ads. So let's talk about some of the static image generations that we can creative, sorry. So the reason I like statics, the reason I like images is because they are cheap, they are fast to create, and to be honest, they perform really well for cold audiences. So don't sleep on these. You know, if you can make like 5 images in the time that you can put one video together, then it's a no-brainer to utilize the image side of things. So obviously, to start off with, we can have a product only. This would just be a clean background. This is your baseline asset. So you probably see a lot of people just running ads with a white background. In my opinion, they're a little bit generic. They're a little bit basic. I like to spice things up, maybe add a slightly more premium background. You can play around with it, right? Again, it's all worth testing at the end of the day. Depends on your business. It might work well for yours, but in my experience, just basic images do not work. So we have to think outside the box a little bit. But that's your baseline asset. Next, we have the lifestyle shots. So this is the product in real use. So it's showing the outcome of people using the product, perhaps it's showing that transformation, or it's just showing the lifestyle behind the product. So you can use people, you can use, again, dogs if you're selling a dog product, anything like that. Flat lay, so this is kind of more what I was talking about with the product only. So it's a top-down styled, premium and shareable, so you can have really nice backdrops. You can use AI for this. I like to build little photo shoots and use professional lighting and stuff like that to make it look more premium. But that being said, some of the tools that we have available to us now with AI are just insane, aren't they? So use them if you can. Next, we have bold graphics. So this is exactly what it says it is. It's just basically a creative with some big text, one message. And the reason these work super well is because we can use these for offers. So let's say, for example, you're doing a crazy offer, an offer so good that people feel stupid saying no for. Then you can put that onto a simple image and just display that your product is, buy one, get one free, buy one, get one half price. 50% off, or whatever deal you're doing. They're just super easy to generate those sort of creatives. Social proof card. So for example, a 5-star quote over the product. These are massively underused, but essentially these work quite well to convince people who perhaps have seen your ads before and they just need pushing over the line. So we can create these sort of creatives because they just help edge them forwards slightly more. So they also work well as retargeting ads. Before and after split. So 2 panels, 1 image, instant proof. So you've all seen these before. It's essentially just 2 sides of the screen, and you're showing that transformation. So works really well with like skincare brand, for example, showing how the skin looked before and then showing how moisturized and how clean the skin is afterwards. And next we have carousels. So these are brilliant because often on an image you can't fit too much information on there. So a carousel works well because you can swipe between the slides and you can read more into it for the people who maybe need more information, for example. So we can list out all the benefits or the steps on how to use the product. More of an education based creative. Right, so next we have infographics. So these are your feature or benefit callouts. These educate in one glance because remember, people are in a rush on social media. So, an infographic does wonders for people who have a short attention span. So you can just display all the benefits and features in one simple graphic. Next, we have a comparison chart. So similar to what I said on the video, but this is just an image version. So it's you versus them, and it frames the decision. So it just puts your business next to another product, or your product, sorry, next to another product, and just highlights why yours is better and why they should buy yours. Next, we have the meme/native. So these work brilliant on social media because most people are on social media to be entertained, right? So if you can create a funny meme that you can run as an ad that relates to your brand and product or the problem it solves, then you will find that they actually perform quite well depending on the niche again. So they're just some examples that we can go through. So let's go on to the angles now. So this is the core creative angles. So we start with the problem to solution. So this is where we lead with the pain. You present your product as the fix, right? So it's super easy to do if you've got an obvious solution to a problem. If you've got that transformation, then this is the sort of thing, the angle we should be tapping into. The next angle is the social proof angle. So reviews and results do the selling. So think about if your business or your product has solved all these problems and you've got all these crazy reviews, well, let that do the talking. Use that in your marketing, because people will buy from other people then more than they'll buy from just a random ad that they see. You got aspirational. So sell who they become and not the product. So you see a lot of premium brands doing this. If you look at Apple, for example, if you look at Gymshark, people want to aspire to look like a Gymshark athlete. They want to go to the gym, they want to lift weights. This is why you often find people who wear Gymshark are usually people that have just started going to the gym and they've kitted themselves out at Christmas with Gymshark head to toe, and they want to aspire to, be like one of these social media fitness influencers, right? It's the same with Apple. Like, people want to buy Apple products because they want to aspire to be a creative, a visionary, someone who has premium tech. So we're selling who they become and not the product. Next, we have product education. So again, doesn't work for all brands, but if you've got a business that is a little bit complicated, it's hard to see what your product actually does, then what we want to do is we want to teach how it works. And, this builds an insane amount of trust and desire. Comparison, again, so like I just spoke about in the image one. So, why would they buy your product? What is it about your brand or your product that gives them a reason to pick yours over them? That's basically what we want to be doing with that angle. Urgency and scarcity. So these, it's an age-old method, an age-old angle, but we're basically just highlighting that we have, low stock, sale ending. We're just trying to build some scarcity. We're trying to highlight. This is why you see a lot of brands, a good example of this is someone like Supreme, how they bring out limited stock, and they, the reason they do that is because they build such a crazy amount of demand that they have people queuing outside the stores, and that builds that scarcity and that urgency and makes people feel like they have to buy it right now before it's too late. So that's what we want to try and lock in. We want to make sure that we don't overuse that, because it makes your brand seem cheap if you overuse it, especially in your marketing. So it's a good angle, but just use it in small amounts. Next, we have the founder/mission, an insanely powerful angle for you to test, because ultimately, like I keep saying, people don't buy from faceless brands, they buy from people. So if you can really get behind your brand and talk about the mission that you're on, hopefully it's a mission bigger than just selling products from China, for example. There's some good examples here in the UK. We've got a water filter business, and their mission is to educate people on why drinking tap water isn't the most safe thing you can do, because a lot of the water here in the UK is contaminated. It's full of pesticides. It's full of all sorts of different stuff that just falls off the land into the water system, and all the pipes underground are not in the best condition. So it causes a lot of health issues, and because of that, they've built this business that sells these filters, and the mission that they're on is bigger than just selling the filters. It's talking about that problem that it solves, and people can get behind that, right? Next, we have trend and cultural. So tie to a moment that people discuss now. A little bit more hard to do, but basically we're just tapping into a trend that's already existing, and we're just trying to, you see airline companies do this all the time, right? Ryanair is really good at this. There's something funny going on, and they just get really creative with how they position their airline seats and make it slightly more funny on the platform, so that you can think outside the box with a few things that you can do in there. Let's move on to some more advanced angles and concepts. Let's go deeper. So we've got the benefit led. So this is leading with the outcome, not the spec. We've got feature led. This is for considered buys. So this is the detail that wins. So we're talking about the features more so than the benefits. We're trying two different angles there, if that makes sense. Objection handling, so name the doubt and then dismantle it. So let's say, for example, your product is hard to sell because it's got some objections, people don't understand it. Well, you're basically creating pieces of content that handle those objections before they even need to comment, because they can see the solution to that problem, and you can follow up on these objections essentially. Next we have category disruption. So the old way is broken, this is the new standard. So again, we're just highlighting your brand or your product as the new way of doing things. People don't like change, and especially when that change is not easily understood. So for example, when all the electric cars out at the moment, like there's some people that don't really like electric cars, including me. I much prefer the more traditional combustion engine because it's got character, it's got style, it sounds good, and people don't like to move over to the electrical side of things because it's disruptive, right? But if you look at the marketing that Tesla's doing and all the big car companies, they're doing a fantastic job at disrupting the market with these new machines that they're building. Ingredient focus. So if you've got a business that has, let's say, a skincare business or a supplement business, we want to talk about those sort of things. So we're zooming in on the hero ingredient and why. So for example, you see a lot of big brands as New Tonic at the moment. They talk about the amount of nootropics and caffeine that are in their drinks, for example, and how more powerful, how outweighs the competitors. Gift and occasion. So another angle. So this works for a lot of businesses. So we're framing for the holidays and treats. So for example, let's say you sell a men's product. Well, you could target women in the gift or occasion category for like Father's Day, Christmas, things like that. So it's just another angle, another ad for you to create. Value/cost per use. Yeah, so brilliant for supplement brands and things like that. So we're framing the price against how long it lasts. So you see a lot of big businesses do this. So let's say, for example, again, we can use, New Tonic, for example. So let's say you're bringing out this supplement and you could talk about the fact that, yours is more expensive, yes, but the reason it's more expensive is because you get double the amount of use out of it. And therefore, technically, it's actually cheaper long term, because if you bought the generic product, you'd have to buy 2 or 3 of them. With ours, you can buy 1 and it will last the same amount of time. So if you've got a product like that, display it. Identity is the next one. So this is for people who. So people see themselves as a certain way. So for example, if you're going to target entrepreneurs, people like to see themselves as an entrepreneur. So you could talk about that in your marketing. Let's say, I don't know, you're a corporate worker, for example, or an engineer or an artist or a sports thing specialist, I don't know. But the point is, people identify themselves as a certain thing. So use your marketing, use that to your advantage. If you look at what Alex Hormozy does, he always talks about this in his books. And when he was doing his big book launch last year, I think it was, or this year, I looked at a lot of his ads, I did some research, and he was really targeting certain identities. So for example, on his ads, he would say, if you're a plumber, if you're a carpenter, if you're an electrician, if you're a car mechanic. So he's literally calling out the identity of these people. So it works really well because that ad on the platform feels like it was made for these people. So when they see that, they relate with it because they identify as that thing. So as you can see from that example, this, the amount of identities that you create, depending on the product and niche, is just insane, isn't it? So let's move on. So next we need to talk about the hooks that stop the scroll, because it's all well and good having a video, but now this is where we start to tap into the different ways that we can capture that attention. So we can have the same ad, but we can have different hooks and a different result off the back of it. So you could literally just have, multiple videos and then have, 10, 20 different hooks for each video just to try and figure out which one works best. So let's go through some of the examples that I've got here. So the first one is a question. still doing this the hard way. So straight away, we are calling out that they are doing it the hard way still. And, we're going to follow up with our video showing the easy way of doing it. We have a bold claim. So this replaced 5 products. So if you've got like an all-in-one solution, then, it's a bold claim, right? Curiosity gap. Nobody tells you about X. So what, straight away, I want to find out what this video is about because I'm curious and I'm excited to hear. Confession. I almost gave up on X until. So what did you get? What did you give up on? Who knows? So, social proof. So social proof works really well, by the way, if you've got social proof. So if you've 10,000 items sold in a weekend, that builds insane social proof. So it's a really good hook. Obviously I'm not saying you need to say 10,000, but whatever is relatable and realistic for you. So just, talk about those sort of things. So with my dog brand, we always used to say, we had X amount and we sold out of all these harnesses. It just builds that insane trust. Myth bust. Everything is wrong. What do I know that's wrong? I want to find out and watch this video. Numbers/stat. So 3 signs you're wasting your money. 3 signs you're wasting money. So what, again, you're calling out this hook and people want to watch the video to see what it's about, right? So this is the whole idea of a hook. Call out, stop buying X until you see this. We've got a visual hook. So these are slightly different. So this is where this is a relatively new way of doing things because people are getting tired of, or people are becoming adapted to the normal style of hook, which is usually an audio hook, right? With a visual hook, you've got, let's say, for example, you start the video midway through the action. So there's no intro, you just literally open it into absolute chaos. So straight away, that acts as a visual hook. And then you can strip it back to maybe the start of that video and give context to what you're actually talking about, because sometimes they're a bit random. And then we've got trending format, so user native sound or edit style. Again, so it's just something trendy that you can capture attention with. There's a lot of businesses that use these, but something that's on the platform already, you're just putting your own spin on perhaps. Okay, so let's talk about the sourcing, so where to actually get your content, because this is the probably the most difficult part, because people just don't understand how to go about doing this and how to get the content. You don't need some expensive studio or a crazy budget. So the 4 ways that I get content and I show people how to get content is: 1, film it yourself. Now if you're going to film it yourself, you need a good phone in good natural light. Super important. You can't just use a crappy Samsung, for example. Nothing against Samsungs, I'm just an iPhone Apple person. But if you're gonna do this, just make sure you have a good camera. Now I'm not saying Samsungs don't have good cameras, but that's just my personal preference. So if you're going to film it yourself, you can do demos, unboxings, walkthroughs. You can do the founder stuff that we talked about. You can do the talk and head clips that we talked about. And of course, you can get lots of B-roll with the product in use. So there's a lot of stuff you can do if you film it yourself. And there's some of the members inside my community, this is something that I'm not seeing done enough. Like, people are relying on other people to get content for them. And then they're wondering why they're, hitting roadblocks, because they're realizing that every time they get a UGC creator, they either do a bad job or they're really expensive and they end up wasting money. If you just learn how to do it yourself, you're going to save yourself a lot of stress and a lot of money. So go out there, practice. It's all just a game of working on these skills. 5 years ago, I didn't know how to do any of this, and over the last few years, I've taught myself how to get good content, how to do cinematography, how to film, take photos, edit, all of it. It's doable, guys. Next, we have the UGC creators. If you have got a budget, we can go down this route, but I'm going to talk through how to do this correctly, because again, it's just another problem that I see across the board in my community and the people that I work with and people on social media. So there's a few ways that you can go about getting these UGC creators. Like I spoke about earlier on in this video, I said about the fact that we can get our customers and bring them on board as affiliates. This is called This is called building an affiliate army. So it works really well because, they've already bought from us, or we've asked them to come on board and they're kind enough to work with us. The other way of doing it is we can look at platforms like Billio, Fiverr, you can look at Shopify collabs, you can look at SocialCat, or you can actually just DM them direct on the platforms at Instagram or TikTok, and just reach out to them, follow them, engage with them, start going back and forth, liking their posts, comments. Don't just send them a blunt DM. We want to treat these people as friends, relationships, build that sort of, rapport back and forth. If you are going to reach out to people and you do find you're communicating, we need to now start thinking about how we're going to bring these people on and brief the angle and hook. So all the stuff that we've just talked about, we need to strategize. We need to come up with a system for our own business. And, if, let's say, for example, we want to test an angle, well, we need to give the creator that angle and that hook ideally, because otherwise they're going to go away and just get random content. And that's not what we want. We want them to get the content that we're looking for, which is the research that's done by us. So don't just allow these creators to randomly get stuff and then just send it to you, because you're going to be disappointed. I would try to ask for as many variations as possible as well. Like, it really frustrates me, some of the creators, they only send 1 or 2 pieces, which is just useless. If they're doing all the work, they might as well just get a bunch of different hooks and different variations, and we can sort of piece things together. So just get as much content as possible. Also, I personally don't like it when a creator makes a video. So I don't like it when they put the music on, when they put the captions on and things like that. It frustrates me. I would rather have the raw videos. Like, don't get me wrong, if they want to be creative, they want to do that, but it's extra work for them, really. I'm just looking for raw content, because I can do the edit, I can do the music, I can pick and choose the style, because it needs to be on brand. If you're not someone who has editing skills, or this is something you perhaps struggle with, then it might be better to ask them to do it for you. But you just want to take into account, like, let's say you ask a bunch of different creators, one of them chooses pink captions, the next one chooses orange captions, and before you know it, your social media page starts to look like a bag of Skittles. So you don't want to just go too crazy there. Just make sure that it's on brand. Again, this is something you can brief them with. Tell them what font you're using, tell them what colors you're using, and try and keep it all in with that cohesion, right? So we want to keep that consistency across the brand. And also, you want to make sure that you can use this content on paid social media and also organic and across your website and things like that. So it's not just the case of just getting a video. You want to make sure you can use it in multiple places. The other thing to think about, which I've only just which has just come to mind, is when we get content, sometimes it's nice to have landscape content as well, because this is the sort of stuff we can use on the website. It's not all about social media. I know this call is about creative diversity for meta ads, but if we're already getting content from creators, just try and ask for some landscape stuff that you can use for, like, the banners and things like that. Customer content. So request clips after purchase. So these are really good for your reviews and things like that, because it's real content. People like to see this sort of stuff. I wouldn't recommend posting this absolutely everywhere, because in most cases it's not going to be the best content, but it does build that credibility, that trust, because people love to see real people using your product. So you can request this after purchase. You can boost these as ads if they're good enough. Screenshot reviews as statistics, for example, and repost DMs and reactions. If someone leaves a nice comment, if someone leaves a nice DM, you can use that as an ad, essentially. AI assisted, so we've already briefly touched on this, but Kling for video, Google Nano Banana for images. You can also use Seedream, and there's a bunch of, to be honest, by the time this video gets put on YouTube, there'll probably be new platforms anyway. So AI world is changing at a rapid rate. So whatever the best AI generation tool that you can use right now, just use that, because you're at the front of the technology there. So you can use AI imagery for lifestyle. Don't overuse this. Try not to use it at all, if I'm honest. I use it like a little bit here and there, but not too crazy. Unless you can't tell, sorry, that it's AI, just be careful with it. AI voiceovers, these are pretty good. You can use these for B-roll. It's getting every time I make a video, it seems to be getting more realistic, and you can barely tell that it's even AI now. And you can use AI stuff to test before paying for UGC creators and filming, right? Because you can make this relatively easy, test it. If it works, then you can pay a bit of money to get it done in real life. How to brief your creatives then. So like we spoke about, you just want to turn this tight brief into a weapon so people actually know what to create and you don't get a load of random stuff back. So firstly, we need the hook. So remember the opening line or first visual, don't leave it to chance. Try and be specific about that. Next, we have the angle. So what's the actual angle that we're trying to push here, and the emotion that you want to land. So if someone watches that video, how do you want them to feel after the video? That's the angle. The format, so is this going to be a talking head? Is it going to be a demo? Is it going to be a voiceover and B-roll? You'd be really surprised the amount of people that I speak to. They want all this UGC, this crazy video, and then what they get back is just a simple unboxing video with a voiceover. And then they're led feeling frustrated because they haven't got what they actually wanted. So be specific about the actual format that you want. So do you want some videos? Do you want some images? If so, what types of images and what types of videos? The key message. So after someone watches your video, what's the one thing they must remember? Key message, important. Call to action. So what do you actually want them to do after they've watched your video? Do you want them to shop? Do you want them to learn more? Do you want them to, claim an offer, for example? So again, you need to tell your creator what you actually want to do there. Number 6 is reference ads. So if you've got some examples of some ads that you've seen running from competitors, for example, just send them over, because that will help the creator understand what you're trying to do there, what sort of vibe you're going for, and how you want the ad to look. Let's talk about the system then. So the testing cadence that I like to use. So this is basically how much to run and in what order. So at the bare minimum, every single week, you should be creating 3 to 5 new creatives. So ideally more than that, but at the bare minimum, it should be around that. So 10 to 15 live variations at any time. So these are different variations of these ads. And the rough budget that we should be using is a 80-20 split. So 80% towards the scale. So these are the ones that are bringing in the sales. And we should allocate 20% of that budget to test. And you can do this in a few different ways. I like to do it in a new ad set. So you can do it in a new campaign, but I simply just have the same campaign and I have a scaling ad set. And then at the moment, I'm testing a new batch with a smaller budget just to try and find the next winning creatives that start to perform well. And then I can either duplicate that into the ad set that's already working, or I can just start to up the budget. And by the way, I use an ABO structure. So this enables you to control the budget at the ad set level rather than the campaign level. And we want to isolate one variable at a time. So step 1, you're testing angles, you're holding format and hooks steady. Step 2, you want to test new formats on your winning angle. So once you find that winning angle, now you're testing different formats, right? So you're testing images, you're testing carousels, videos, iPhone clips, you're testing polished cinema camera clips, loads of different types of formats that you can test. Step 3, now we're testing fresh hooks on the winning format plus the angle. So now we're finding what works. We're starting to narrow down the best angles and the best formats for our business. Now it's a case of testing different hooks so we can capture the most attention, we can get people to watch our videos and hopefully click on that call to action and go over to our website and purchase. Obviously, this video is just half the story. This is just about the marketing side of things, the creative diversity. I do more videos talking about the other side of things, the actual store, the offers, the design. There's so many different elements to ecom, and this is why it's a lot of people struggle because the tunnel vision. They're looking at one thing, but it's likely that there's an issue everywhere, and we're just letting leaks. I like to use the analogy, the leaky bathtub, right? If you try and fill a bathtub and it's got holes in, that bath is not going to fill very quick, and you're going to start wasting a lot of water. Your water being the traffic that you're paying for through your paid marketing. So if your bathtub has loads of leaky holes, let's say your conversion rate is low, your design is bad, your content looks awful, these are all contributing to the conversion rate, which is ultimately losing you a lot of money in the process. So we can have the best ads in the world, but if your store's not converting, that's another issue, which I will talk about in a different video. So that's the loop. We want to scale the winners and we want to refresh before fatigue. And then we repeat that process over and over again. And this is what I've been doing, and it works really well. I've got a brand new business that I launched a couple of months ago, and we are scaling up using this exact process, this system, and it works wonderful. Metrics. Let's talk about the metrics just quickly. So we want to read the results like a funnel. Each stage tells you exactly what to fix. So you can set these columns, these metrics up in your ads manager. So we've got your hook rate. So this is the people that watch past 3 seconds long. So I like to set these up so you can see how many people have watched, for example, the average view duration. You've also got the amount of people that have watched 25% of the video, 50%, 75 and 100%. And you can start to sort of understand, how many people are watching the whole video, how many people are only making it halfway, for example. So you can play around with different. I'm not going to go into this video about how to set these up on your ads manager because it's super easy to do. And to be honest, you can just use ChatGPT to show you how to do that. But you want to be able to measure this because we want to see which hook is performing the best, right? So if one of them's getting more people watching past the 3 seconds, and that shows that it's a better hook. It could be the same video but different hooks at the start. Hold rate, so this is the reach from 25% to 50%. So we're seeing how many people actually watch that video. And then we've got the link click-through rate. So 1.5 to 3% for cold traffic. So this is essentially the amount of people that see the ad and the amount of people that actually click on the link, the shop now button, for example, and go over to your website. So if that's really high, then you're doing a fantastic job. If it's super low, then you've not made a good enough ad, as simple as that. And the most important ones are the ROAS and the cost per acquisition. So the other ones are kind of irrelevant. If you could have a really good ROAS and you could have a really poor, the rest of the metrics could look really bad. I've seen this happen a lot of times. But the most important is the ROAS, because this is essentially your return on ad spend. So how much you're spending versus how much you're actually making back on your Shopify or whichever e-commerce platform that you're using. I recommend Shopify, by the way. Give this 3 to 5 days, sometimes even longer. You want to make sure that you're making some money here, right? That's the whole point of doing this. Your ROAS needs to be higher. The higher that is, the more money you're making, and the lower your cost per acquisition needs to be. Because let's say you sell a product for £50, and from the supplier, that product costs you £10. You spend £20 on ads, so you're £30 in. That gives you a £20 profit margin. But remember, you need to pay for shipping, storage, all the fees. So you need a decent buffer. So just make sure you're paying cheap enough for your ads there, for the acquisition, right? The cost per action. I see some brands that I work with inside my community, they're trying to sell a product for £20 and they're running ads to it. Now, that product probably cost them over £6-7 from the supplier, plus you got shipping, storage, like I said. And they're trying to get ads to convert under £10. Now, in some cases, this is possible, but it's a lot more difficult, right? This is why selling a product for £20 is not something that I recommend. You need to push that average order value up. You need to get the customer to spend much, much more to allow you to have the budget to run ads. You can't expect to be a millionaire selling a £20 product using paid marketing. It's very difficult. So we've recently done this with my new business. We had a bunch of products that we're selling for around $20, and we was having that exact issue. So what I've done is I've combined those products into a bundle, and that bundle we are selling for £60, and I've also added a license which is £12. So all in all, it's £72 if they select those two things. And over the last 3 weeks, the average order value has gone up from around £25 to around £65 now, £70 even. So it's insanely better profit margin, because now we can spend more on ads and still make a lot of money in the process, right? So some of the things to also watch are the frequency. So this is the amount of times your ad will actually show to the average person. So if that starts to go past the number 3, then basically what that means is the average person is seeing that 3 times on average, which is quite a lot. And I think people start to get a bit annoyed with that, and it's very repetitive, right? So ideally you want to keep that below 2. And CPM, so this is the amount of people, I think it's 1,000, the cost per 1,000 impressions. So what that means is how much does it cost to show this ad to 1,000 people on the platform? Now, if this is high, Meta dislikes the creative. It's basically telling you that it thinks your ad is shit. So if you've got high CPM, it could be to do with the audience as well, but in my experience, you can get that CPM lower by making better ads. So just bear that in mind. Bit of an action plan to finish then. So this is your 30-day creative sprint. So run this if you've been stuck on 1 or 2 ads for a while. You're making some money, but you don't know what to do, how to scale. So let's just go through this briefly. So week 1, I want you to audit your current ads. So find your best performing angle if you have been tested different angles. Week 1 also, I want you to film 3 video formats on that same angle. Week 2, let's start making some hooks. So make 5 hooks on your best video. Run each one as an ad. So again, a lot of people in my community, you can take those videos that you've already got and just start making better hooks for them. Build 3 statics. So these are your images, remember? So product, lifestyle, social proof. Week 3, brief 1 UGC creator with the winning angle. So if you found a good angle, start reaching out to creators and see if you can start to work with these people and brief them on the angle that's already working. Test 2 brand new angles that you've never tried also. So you can set this up in the same ad set, or you can create a new ad set with a new angle. Week 4, scale the top 2 and switch off the bottom half. So this is where a lot of people slip up, because they're running these ads, and when you get to the point where you're running quite a lot of ads, it gets a little bit confusing, and you're probably leaking money through some ads that are not bringing you any sales. So it's important to make sure you're in your ad account all the time and just going through these and making sure that you're turning them off, essentially, because you'd be surprised how many ads in the past I've looked at and I've spent hundreds of pounds with, and they've not been performing, and that budget could have gone into the winners, right? And week 4 also, lock in a weekly rhythm. So 3 fresh creatives a week, 3 minimum. I would recommend more, but just get into the habit, guys, of trying to make as many ads as possible and see it as part of your routine. The main driver of how we make money for ecom is content, it's creatives, it's selling online, it's showing up on people's social media. So you need to stop seeing running ads as just something that you do once and you just let it run. This is the main part of the job that we need to focus on, right? So every single week, it's a non-negotiable for you to start thinking about what pieces of content, what angles, what formats, what hooks do I need to film and create this week. That is how you're going to win. That is how you're going to scale your ad account. That's how you're going to find what ads actually work and how you're going to make money. So don't sit back and relax and think about do all these pointless store tweaks. Now, I'm not saying they're all pointless, because if your conversion rate is low, then that's also a huge factor in why you might not be successful, why your store might be struggling. but we need to get people onto the website and we need to do it in a cheap way. So that's what this call was about. The brands that win aren't the ones with the biggest budget. They are the ones that never stop testing. Check out your competitors and have a look how many ad creatives they're running. If you look at companies like Nike, Adidas, some of the big players in this game, they are running hundreds, if not thousands, of different creatives at once. So that shows you the huge diverse amount of options that they have running at the same time. So pick one format and one angle that you've never tested and film it this week and start getting it out there and see what happens. If you want to learn more about how to do all this and you need my help and some of the strategies that I use, I'll put the link for my community in the description and you can get yourself in there and you can start to work with me and we can scale your business. I can help you build and start making some decent money online, building these ecom businesses. If you get it right, it's truly life-changing, and that's one of the most fantastic things about this modern world. We can make money online, building these businesses, and it's one of the best feelings ever. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found that helpful. I mean, this is something that I definitely struggled with in my first few years. I didn't really understand what sort of ads to make and what even creative diversity meant in the first place. So hopefully after watching this, you've got some clarity and a bit of an action plan going forward. But anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.